Hello everyone and welcome back to another Getting Stuff Painted, my bi-weekly update give or take on the miniatures I've been painting for the games we cover here on the channel. And I've actually been getting stuck in and getting quite a lot of painting done, so there's more to talk about this week than usual, including the rare in the wild sighting of some finished scenery that's been sitting around for 2 and a bit years maybe, but I guess we'll talk about that in a second. Despite having so many miniatures on the table, there's only 3 games to talk about. A ton of Marvel Crisis Protocol, a chunk of Fallout Wasteland Warfare, and then right on the end we've got a tiny bit of Elder Scrolls Call to Arms, including everybody's favourite House Carl, but we'll get to that as well. So as usual, with breaks to throw toys for my overeager dog who's already placed one at my foot. We'll go from left to right, talk about all this stuff as usual, all painted, well 90% painted with contrast paint and based in Grey Seer. So I'll need to pull back first to get a proper view of Doramu's Portal. So this was it with Doramu when he released for Crisis Protocol. You got this as kind of like where he can stand, like his base looks like this, although I just glued this in because these kind of, this along with Thanos' throne, they're not practical really. You can have them in like the corners of a battlefield, sure, which is probably how this is going to be used. But in terms of like actually using it for placing objectives or models on, it's just there to up the price really. And I totally forgot about this. I've been clearing out this table that I'm filming on right now at 6x4. I'm trying to clear enough room to start trying to play Skyrim the board game, and it needs a lot more table space than I realised. And I'm also kind of struggling with the rulebook. It's not easy to get through, as people pointed out. But I wanted to start clearing this table, so I was just tidying away things, and I found a bunch of miniatures I forgot about, including this. So I was like, you know, I'll just paint this like I painted Thanos' throne. It will not take long. I spray painted it Basilicanum Grey, Space Wolves Grey I think it's called, whatever the grey spray is from Citadel. I dry brushed it with Grey Seer, and then I just added the fire effects, which is Magmadroth Flame, whatever the new orange contrast is called. I like it a bit better than the old one, Gryph-hound Orange, because it's warmer and brighter, with a little bit of Iyanden Yellow and Iron Jaws Yellow, and some non-oil as well for shade. Super simple. I know it's not great, but hey, it's done. It has literally been sitting since whenever Doramu released, just off camera over there in a pile of stuff that I found on the table that I forgot about. So whenever Doramu released, that has been sitting completed. So I'm glad I finally got it done. It will show up in a Crisis Protocol video just because, and tangentially connected because it's not really tied to any particular game. I had a bunch of 3D printed like rotted tree stumps. I only ever painted one because, and I found these when I found the portal, because it's not a great resin for contrast paint. It's super reflective. The paint just was not sticking to it. So for these I just spray painted them red with Rust-Oleum brown. I think it's chestnut brown. It looks actually a bit pale for chestnuts. I can't remember what name of brown, but it's by Rust-Oleum. And then I did a dry brushing of Mornfang Brown over them and called it good. Basically, I know they're not great again, but it's just to get them done rather than having them be there and just not be painted. I think I did a little bit of sepia wash over them as well, but it doesn't stick. So it kind of created almost like a broken dead beechwood kind of effect. The kind of thing you would see in Fallout 76 in the like not irradiated, but kind of like swampy Grafton area, you know, the kind of trees, if you played the game, those kind of trees, it reminds me of those. So for post-apocalyptic stuff, or just like a burnt down forest, I think they'll still do at distance, and I'm just glad that they're out of the way, because I wasn't touching them just because they weren't taking well to contrast paint. So just being able to use a brown spray paint and a dry brush and call it good is fine by me. Alright, I've moved the camera over a little bit so we can talk proper about the miniatures, because that's the important part, and we'll start with all these miniatures for Crisis Protocol. I've still been trying to get through the starter set. The only character I have left now to do with the completion of both versions of Captain Marvel, Spider-Man and Black Widow is Ultron and his drones, which hopefully won't be too time consuming. Along with that, I've been working on the Spider-Foes box with Sandman and the other Sinister Six, but I got Vulture and Shocker done. I've still got Electro and Sandman, and they'll be probably quite soon. I want to prioritise the new Asgard releases, but I'm also kind of trying to do it in order, because I have a few previous releases I just haven't gotten around to yet. So in terms of who I painted first, I think it was Black Widow first out of all these actually. So I did that because she would be quite easy with the Ultron drone just being Lead Belcher Silver. We'll give the camera a minute because she's in a weird pose. I do like that it is displaying that in the comics Black Widow does have super strength as well. So she's just like kneecapping the Ultron's chin, or the drone's chin, sorry, and just breaking him apart. It's a very cool pose, very dynamic, much better than the original Black Widow, who always looked a little weird. Granted, it was trying to copy the comic style, or a particular artist's style. This is a lot more flattering in the right ways, I feel, rather than just having the weird like thighs, and you know, if you've seen the old miniature, you know what I'm talking about. So I used Black Templar contrast paint on her with some Nazdrag yellow for the golden parts, a little bit of a wash over the top, and just neon oil over the silver. For the orange, I used that same Magna Droth, or whatever it's called, Flame, the new orange contrast paint, and a little bit of Frostheart for the mechanical kind of sparking area. And all the Crisis Protocol bases, I always do the same thing. I go over them with Basilicanum Grey, I let it dry, I do a little bit of Aggressor shade in the cracks, and then I use Storm Vermin Fur to make a smoother layer on top where around the cracks, which is my chosen style to make it look okay. So she was super simple. Oh, and I actually used Gryph-hound Orange for her hair because her hair is a dark orange, not a warm one. So that's what I did for that. It turned out okay. After her, it was the Spidered Man, as my community calls him. And another fantastic pose, although I would say the game has a bit too many, well, I was going to say it has a bit too many versions of Spider-Man, but then I was also about to follow up with please add Superior Spider-Man. But that's technically Doc Ock, so, you know, it counts as someone different. I want that version. But very cool pose, and at the base I used, actually, it makes it look like Venom has kind of sneak attacked him coming out of the sewer. It isn't super visible, but that's the base type I used, so that's my headcanon for what's going on here, and he's kind of getting away. So very dynamic pose. For Venom, it was just Black Templar with the Fang dry brushed on top and Volupus Pink for his tongue and around his jaw, etc. And it's just the base coat for his eyes and teeth with non-oil over the top. For Spidey himself, it was Bal Red for the red parts, it was Talisar Blue for the blue parts, a little bit of non-oil put in places to try and add a bit of shadow, and Black Templar for the logo. And I did that on both this time because I wasn't sure what colour to make the back one. In retrospect, probably should have just gone red. I think classic is red, but doesn't matter, you can't really see it. And it's just the base coat with Apothecary contrast paint, whatever it's called, on the spider web, or the the web line, to just make that look great. The pose is doing a lot of work here. Like it is one of the more dynamic poses available for the game because it is a moment of action caught. It's one of those poses though that's also a little awkward, like say you had Venom on your team or the enemy had Venom. It's weird that he's on the base. It's kind of like in the Batman miniature game, Bane and Scarecrow used to be able to be in the same crew together before Scarecrow had his own crew, and one of the Bane miniatures is strangling Scarecrow. So you could have Scarecrow next to Bane strangling Scarecrow, and it's just, I don't know, that kind of stuff kind of bugs me sometimes. But in this case, I think it turned out pretty decent. Trying to make those eyes look even halfway decent is always an absolute nightmare. If you zoom in on it, you can tell that it's not super great, but at this kind of range, I'm okay with it. And I think he's a 3-threat Spider-Man as well, so we've got like a 3-threat, a 4-threat, and a 5-threat version of Peter Parker. Move over, and we've got Ben Reilly, who's basically Peter Parker. So yeah, Superior Spider-Man, get Doc Ock in the web suit and give me some spider drones. I can't wait. That is my favourite version of Spider-Man. Favourite suit and just favourite attitude. It's such an interesting contrast to Peter, but no, he's not been revealed yet, so I guess he's down the line. One throw later, I handled Vulture next to is on a very large base and is swooping down, and he made me realise that I needed to replace my Mantis Warrior green because it's starting to kind of get a bit weird when there's not much left. Maybe the bottle isn't quite closing properly, it gets a bit shiny, so I had to deal with that. I've ordered a new one now, but it was too late for him, so it is a little bit over shiny, I feel, a little glossy. I did a little bit of a dry brushing of, is it Nurgling green? Some of the quite bright, vibrant, normal green from Citadel to try and just pick out some of the highlight areas. It's just the base coat for the ruff of his neck, Gilman Flesh for his skin tone. I used, that is Fireslayer Flesh for the bricks. And for his wings, I did a bunch of different stuff. I used a Biotan Green wash very, very lightly. I used a tiny bit of the same green very, very lightly, and then I dry brushed on top of that with Grey Seer, and then went on top of that with non-oil to try and get the reflective wing look, but also still a little bit of green. I don't know, it turned out okay, I guess. I wouldn't say it looks super metallic, which is what I was really looking for. I feel like maybe some silver would have helped, but I didn't want to touch it because I was worried I'd wreck it. So I settled for that, and it looks okay. Fun pose. He's doing the Karate Kid, basically. Is that too dated of a reference now? It might be. But either way, fun miniature. He's just a cheap 3-threat, a space filler essentially, but he makes up for like what he can do thanks to being on the larger base size. It gives him a lot of movement because he's medium move. He's on a larger size base. He has a place within 3, I think, or place within 2, and he can drag an enemy with him, which is an interesting little mechanic for him. But we're going to see Angel released in the end of September, I believe, and he's kind of just like the polar opposite of this guy. He seems a little bit more versatile, but you've also got to take into consideration the crews that they're meant for, and this is Sinister Six, so I don't know. I'm talking about him like I've tried him. I haven't tried him yet. We will see Vulture in the future. And along with Vulture, I finished Shocker, who I wasn't sure what to do for the sort of brownish red parts, the burgundy, I guess, parts, which is what I was going to settle on, and he's struggling to get into focus. There we go. It is a weird pose. It's a cool pose, though. I do like this pose. And you might notice if you're facing dead on, that fist should not be facing that way. A fist can still face that way. I didn't notice the error, unfortunately. It allowed me to fit it in there with no problems, so I thought I'd done it right. It's supposed to be kind of, like 40 degrees the other way. So unfortunately that is a mistake. You can only notice it dead on, really. It looks fine from the side or above or from the back. But as I was saying, yeah, so for the burgundy sort of parts, I actually used Flesh Terror Red and a little bit of non-oil on top, I believe it was. I was originally going to use the actual burgundy contrast, but I thought that it looked a bit too bright, because in most, like in art from comic books, sometimes it's a flat brown, those parts of his costume that aren't yellow, and sometimes it's a bit more red, and sometimes it's mixed, sometimes it's burgundy. So I settled on the one that to me matched most what he looked like in the cartoon, because I love the 90s cartoons, so that's what I went for. For the yellow, I believe I used Iron Jaws yellow and non-oil over the top to try and pick out the netting effect. It did result in an overall darker feel to it rather than being bright and vibrant, which is just the way my painting usually goes. For this I used, it's the new contrast paint that's just a very light blue, Briar Queen Chill I think it is, and then just did the grey as I've done all the other bases. Again, very, very cool pose for a 3-threat miniature that doesn't really do that much, but I'm glad, and he's on the bigger base, which is a bit of an advantage for a medium mover. But I like that they're giving the Sinister Six and just the classic spider villains like time to shine in these fancy poses, because compare that to the other, like Lizard, he was on this size of base and he had a cool pose as well. New Doc Ock is pretty good looking. Green Goblin could probably do with a more up-to-date version, probably. He's one of the older releases, so it doesn't look that great. But like Carnage looks great, even if he doesn't perform that great. All the classic Spider-Man villains, they do seem to go out of their way to make them look pretty decent, and I wouldn't be surprised if someone on the team is like a big fan of them. So last but not least, and also the most recent one I finished for the Crisis Protocol stuff, is from the original, or from the Mightiest Heroes starter box I should say. It's Captain Marvel, but then also Captain Marvel in binary form. So I used the same colours across both. I was tempted to try and do like a yellow glow around her binary form, because that's what she should technically have. The official paint job doesn't do that, but I wimped out. I was too scared it would wreck it, so I just didn't. So I used a Krellin green for the blue parts of her suit, which is the bluish green contrast paint, and it actually kind of fits perfectly. Is that in focus? I hope it is. I can't quite. It's one of those models. Now it's not. I think it was before though. Well, hopefully it roughly is. For the red parts, that's just Baal Red. For the gold parts, it's Nazrak Yellow Skin, Gulliman Flesh. For her hair, I used the Agros Dunes, whatever it's called, the one I'm going to be using for Sandman, which is just more of a lighter blonde, a less yellow blonde. And that's the Yandin Yellow, and the other new orange contrast paint for the like burst of power she's about to shoot into the air with. The base done in the same way, and all the same colours in her binary form version, except this time she has the space helmet on. I do like how it looks in motion, like she goes from about to fly off to flying off, with a little bit of the yellow glow catching on her boot there, which was actually kind of by accident, but I like how it looks, so I didn't correct it. I used a little bit of yellow on her hands after it was all dry as well, just to make it look like she's charging some energy beams. But as I say, like maybe down the line in the future, I'll get the guts to try and do like a yellow glow or a yellow wash over binary form. But I think it looks fine as is. So I don't know. I might talk myself into it. I tried to look for other people who've maybe done that and couldn't find any. I could only find people who did it for the original Captain Marvel that was in the original starter box. So I'm not sure. But this one, I love how it looks, and I love how they tell a story when you change forms. And she is a 5 threat. She is apparently ridiculously powerful, and I'm looking forward to seeing what she can do. I sincerely hope that was mostly in focus. It's one of those just weird things where it's hard to gauge, but that's how they look. She goes from that to that, and I love how it flows. It's awesome looking. So that brings us to Fallout Wasteland Warfare. We'll leave those two there. So I have the last two gunners that I talked about last time, so I don't really have much to say about them. It's just the other two gunners from that gunner box. So that's them done. I painted them the exact same way. I went into detail about the paints I used last time, so please go look at that if you want reminded. But just as a matter of note, hey, they're here. I actually kind of like the little details in this one. This one's base, the shovel, the sandbag, whatever that is. I recognize them from the game, but I'm not sure what they are. But either way, so just a classic gunner. I think he's just one of the conscripts, and then we have this one who's in a kneeling position with, I think he had two options for, or she, I don't know, had two options for whipping. I just went for the shotgun, but I think there was an assault rifle variant. There was definitely a different gun, I just can't remember offhand which it was. But painted both them in the same way. Found quite a simple way to do their armor that I like, that almost has the camouflage look that I talked about last time, just by doing the rust dry brush over the mantis green. So yeah, pretty good. And that is that gunner's box completely done, and you'll be seeing them later in the current Fallout Wasteland Warfare season. I also have two more variants of dog meat, and I'm painting them up because I at some point I want to introduce a NPC who just has a bunch of doggles. I don't know in what capacity yet, but this is the armored version of dog meat that is available for the game. So I basically painted him exactly like dog meat, so it's just wildwood with snakebite leather, silver with the rust over the top, and aggressor shade, which I think I mentioned. He's got the bear that he sometimes plays with in Fallout 4 on the base. I just realised that's supposed to be stuffing coming out of him, so technically that should be like white, and I didn't notice. I might change that, but either way, that's done. And then I just had, because I bought some old Fallout Wasteland Warfare's miniatures off of someone ages ago, it had basically a copy of everything from the original starter box. So this is just the default, hard to get in focus. There we go. Dog meat from the starter box. I was like, okay, so I want to paint him up. I don't want to paint him just like a Doberman or whatever he's meant to be. Not Doberman, German Shepherd. But I want him to look realistic. I already have another one I painted up ages ago to look like my dog, which might make an appearance. I'm not decided yet. Depends how nice she is during these videos. So for this one I used that Agros Dunes, or Agroros, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but that Dunes colour I'm talking about. I used that just to kind of get a golden retriever-ish kind of look. Obviously not exactly, because that's not that breed, but just so it looks different enough, but also still believable. That's what I was looking for, because as I say, I want someone to have like a pack of doggos that follow them around, so I need a few variants. So the armoured version of dog meat looks different enough to the version of dog meat we're using currently. So does that one. I put Nuka Orange on his base, which I forgot to point out. I've got the one that looks like my dog Sora, and I think I've got one other one I could paint up in some different style. And last but not least, we have, as I mentioned at the start, everyone's favourite housecarl, Lydia, for Elder Scrolls Call to Arms. This is basically your first housecarl you'll run into, because you get her right after you kill your first dragon. You have to kill your first dragon to get your dragon shouts. So this is Lydia from a box of adventure companions, I think. Not much to say about her, it's just a mix of a lot of Leadbelcher silver, snakebite leather, rattling grime, gloaming flesh for her skin tone. I think I used, not Black Templar, the other black contrast paint for her hair, the one that's darker and doesn't allow much like thinning, and Null Oil over the top. Same kind of thing for the base with Basilicanum Grey and Rattling Grime for the planks of wood. Fun, super simple miniature. She's in the exact same pose as the dragon Dovahkiin that comes in the starter box, weirdly. Like his shield's a bit bigger, but basically the identical pose. And from the same box we also have, he doesn't have a name, he's not based on a specific person, it is just like an orc barbarian is how I think they're referred to as. There is another named person in the box, it's Kajaro, who I've never really interacted with in a game, but I think it's a Khajiit mercenary that if you do a questline for will accompany you if you wish as a follower. But this is just a generic, hey, it's an Orc Barbarian with a two-handed axe in a Dwemer rune, based on what was on his base, which was done in Nazrag Yellow. The Hulk Green, as I call it, for skin tone, which I think is Mantis Warrior, because Striking Scorpion... Oh, Striking Scorpion is the brighter one I was using for Vulture. I said the wrong colour earlier. Yeah, Mantis Warrior Green is the slightly paler this green, which I actually really like as a shade. And Lead Vulture Silver for his armour, non-oil on top. Simple. Along with Kajaro, there is... Ooh, there's a Khajiit Bandit that I think, or like dual wielder, I don't know how he's referred to, in the box, and there is an Ultimate Archer, I think. That's the other things that are in the box. And this is me just trying to get some stuff for Call to Arms painted up in general, so we can play it more often once we have some variety. Well, they're all off to the side now because I was moving them to the side as I was talking about them, but that is going to do it for another painting update on the channel. I hope you enjoyed watching. I hope it helped inspire you to get your pile of grey shaven painted. It doesn't matter how good you are at painting as long as you enjoy the process, and you'll get better at it over time the more you do and the more you pick up little tips and tricks and stuff like that. It's fun. If you want to show me what you've been painting, feel free to do so on Blue Sky, which is linked below, or my Discord if you're in there. If you need a link to the Discord, I think channel members get one by default, and you can also just stop by when I'm streaming and I'll happily share the link. So next time there will be definitely more Crisis Protocol because I have some sitting in progress. I hope to get more of that Call to Arms box done. I hope to stay well clear of scenery. Maybe get Sandman done. I'm kind of working up the confidence for Sandman because although he's not that super great on the table, I really like the miniature, so I want to try and do it justice. So I have to build up the confidence for that. We might see Electro, and beyond that I'm not sure. Maybe some Battletech. I have some Battletech sitting. I've decided I want to paint up some of them as House Kurita, so that because that seems simple enough because they're basically 100% red almost. Just need to add some definition. So that seems like a fun way to bring another like group to the table that isn't super time consuming. But we'll see. As always, thank you again for watching. Please do remember to show your support, and I will see you in roughly 2 weeks for another painting update. Until then, ta-ta for now.